Hey Frag fam, Corbin here again from Northwest Scent. So a few weeks ago I saw this tag video going around and I believe it was started by Max Forte if I'm not mistaken. It was called 7 fragrance notes and a fragrance to go with it or something along those lines. Basically fragrances that are dominated by a certain note and you're choosing your top 7 favorite notes and then again the fragrance to go along with it. So that's exactly what I'm going to be doing in this video. I was not tagged, however I thought it was a really cool video concept, so I decided to just go ahead and do it. So that's what we're going to be doing today in this video. So if you want to hear about my 7 favorite fragrance notes and then my personal favorite fragrance in my collection to go with that note, please stick around. But first, let's roll that intro. Alright, welcome back. So like I said in the intro, this is going to be my top 7 favorite fragrance notes and then my personal favorite fragrance that is heavily influenced by that note. And this is not going to be a rank list like usual because I would have a really hard time putting these in order. Again, these are just my 7 favorite notes. So with that out of the way, let's get into the first fragrance. And starting the list off here with the first note, we are talking about Cedar. Now, I really like woody notes in general. Oud, cypress, cedar, of course, sandalwood, all of them I dig in fragrances, but I had to settle on one. And again, the one I ended up going with was Cedar. I just love the dry, peppery, very woody side it has to the fragrance. It's a very unique smelling woody note. The fragrance I chose for it to go along with is from the House of Creed. It is this one right here called Royal Oud. And ironically enough, this should be called Royal Cedar. I get zero oud in this fragrance. It is dominated by cedar, and it's the first thing you smell. At least it's the first thing that I smell when I spray it on. You do get a couple of citruses in the top, and they're very much so in a supportive role. They're not dominated at all. You get a little bit of that citrusy touch, like I said. You get a ton of the cedar, and then there's a little bit of angelica, kind of providing this balsamic side to the fragrance as well. But I would say 80% of this fragrance to my nose is cedar. It smells very realistic. If you've ever been around a cedar tree, then you know how they smell. And honestly, to me, it smells like they took the sap from the cedar tree and put it here in this bottle. Very authentic smelling, and this is my pick for a cedar dominated fragrance. So again, here at the first spot from the House of Creed, this is Royal Oud featuring the note of cedar. So moving right along, the next note we're going to be talking about is lavender. Now, lavender is no stranger to this channel. I have a ton of fragrances that feature the note of lavender because I have a ton of barbershop fragrances. Barbershop fragrances usually have, of course, like I said, lavender, but you also get a little bit of oak moss, tonka bean, or maybe some cardamom. Very distinctive smelling, and my favorite fragrance to go along with lavender, it is this one right here from the House of Tom Ford. This is Beau de Jour. And I've talked about this fragrance so many times. I absolutely love it. This has such a realistic lavender. There's actual lavender extract in here as well as a lavender note, whatever that means. Maybe it's a little bit synthetic, but they have real lavender extract in here. There's also basil. You get some rosemary, so it's very green and herbaceous. You get a little bit of geranium as well, which is very much in the background. Makes this a little bit cooling in a way. Very, very nice fragrance. This is not super fresh. I would honestly say this is quite a dense green herbaceous fragrance with that kind of soapy lavender there. Very classy, very gentlemanly smelling, and that's why I absolutely dig this stuff. It's pretty long lasting as well, which doesn't hurt, but it's just an all around really good lavender heavy fragrance. So again, for my next pick, for the note of lavender, it is this one from the House of Tom Ford. This is Beau de Jour. So moving right along, the next note we're going to be talking about is actually from the citrus family. Now, in general, I like stuff with more complexity and depth. So initially, I didn't think citruses would make the cut at all. I thought I would be settling more on darker notes. However, when I started looking at fragrances from my collection that I really enjoy a lot, I honestly had quite a few that have this note in a dominant spot that overlapped, you know, so I had a lot of fragrances that I really enjoyed featuring this note. The note we are talking about is Grapefruit, and then the fragrance that features it is this one from Ormond Jane. This is Montebaco Verano. And man, this smells so good. I've talked about this honestly quite a bit recently, and that's for good reason. This is a perfect summertime fragrance for this time of year, and it is so pleasant smelling to my nose. So grapefruit in general, it's kind of unique as far as citruses go. It has this bitter side to it, but sometimes it is balanced really nicely with a sweet side, and that's what you get here in this fragrance. It's not just a tart, bitter citrus. You get a little bit of the sweetness as well, and that grapefruit is supported by tobacco, but it's not a heavy tobacco. It's very much kind of in this light, almost leafy territory, which is really really unique. Usually when you see tobacco featured, it's a lot heavier and more syrupy. I like how it's done here in this fragrance. There's honestly a little bit of suede in this fragrance as well, but it's very light and well done. In general, this fragrance is just light, airy, and very, very grapefruit heavy. So if you want something that is dominated by the note of grapefruit and actually has pretty decent longevity, you should really look into this fragrance from Ormond Jane. So again, my favorite grapefruit fragrance is this one from Ormond Jane, Montebaco Verano. So the next note we're going to be talking about is benzoin, which of course is from the resin family. Now in general, resins are very heavy, almost syrupy sweet, and they usually have this powdery side to them, maybe a little bit of this leathery touch as well. In the case of benzoin, as far as resins goes, it's a little bit on the fresher side, and it has this sparkliness to it in a way. It almost adds this carbonated feel to the fragrance. Of course, the fragrance that we're going to be talking about, I've talked about this one many times. This is Creation E from the house of Roja Parfums. This is a very much so benzoin dominated fragrance. It has this very lively sparkliness to it. It almost smells like fancy Coca-Cola, although there is a lot more depth to it than that. You do get some other resins in here as well. There's actually citruses in the top. You even get tobacco. I think there's cognac in here as well. Adds this nice kind of sweet booziness to the fragrance. This just smells so classy. This is like something you're gonna wear when you're dressed up fairly nicely and you're at some kind of gentleman's club, or maybe like a whiskey bar or something like that, and you're smoking a cigar. That's just kind of the image I get when I smell this fragrance, and it smells fantastic. I always say this, if you have not had a chance to sample Creation E, also known as Enigma, of course, everywhere else in the world, you absolutely need to. This is one of the best smelling fragrances I have ever tried, and I'm not kidding. So again, utilizing the note of benzoin, which is my favorite resin, that is Roja Parfums Creation E. So the next note we're going to be talking about is actually another floral, which I know we already talked about lavender, which is another floral, and earlier I said I was trying to avoid sticking too many notes from the same category in this video. However, between the two of them, I could not decide which one I had to put in here. I have so many fragrances between the two that I absolutely love, so I ended up just sticking both of these notes in here from the floral family. This note here in this spot that we were talking about is actually iris. Now, unlike lavender, which usually presents itself in mostly the same way every time, iris can be very different. Sometimes you get this powdery side to it that's a little bit heavy. It can also be very fresh and soapy. And then additionally, even from that, you can kind of get this waxy side to it. Almost smells like lipstick or like makeup. And I actually really dig that part of iris a ton. I love the Dior Homme line that features that waxy iris. And actually, one of the fragrances from the Dior Homme line is here in this spot. My absolute favorite from that line and my absolute favorite iris dominant fragrance is this one right here. This is Dior Homme Parfum. Now to my nose, this fragrance is the most iris heavy flanker in the line, but there are some other notes that really round this thing out and make it so enjoyable for me. You get oud in here as well, which oud is one of my favorite notes as well. Unfortunately, it did not make it here in this list. The oud here is not filthy or animalic. It's very much just like a woody note, kind of dark. There's some leather in here. A little bit dirty of a leather. It's not the cleanest smelling like suede, but it's certainly not animalic either. It's a very kind of mild and well-mannered leather, and there's rose in here as well, which adds this kind of jammy floral aspect. But to me, this is definitely dominated by the oud, the iris, and then the leather. This is such a fantastic, classy fragrance, and honestly, it does smell niche quality. I know that's kind of a buzzword in the community, but truly, if this was in any kind of niche company's bottle, I would totally believe it. This does not smell like your run-of-the-mill designer, and unfortunately, it is pretty hard to find nowadays. But if you guys can find a bottle of this, even if you're not sure if you'll like it, honestly, just blind buy it. This is such a fantastic fragrance. And then of course, if you can't find a bottle, I would at least recommend sampling again if you can. I just love it so much, and I'll always have a bottle of this in my collection. So again, my favorite fragrance featuring the note of iris, that is this one right here, Dior Homme Parfum. So up next, we're gonna be talking about a spice, and more specifically, we're gonna be talking about the note of cardamom, which honestly, I think cardamom would be on a lot of people's lists for their favorite fragrance notes. And that's just because not only do you see it utilized in so many fragrances nowadays, but it's so appealing and easy to wear and smell, of course. It's very pleasant. Of course, it is spicy, but it has this kind of fresh sweetness to it as well. There's a little bit of this edible vibe to it usually as well. You see it in a lot of gourmand fragrances. A lot of people, when they're thinking of cardamom, you might think of Yves Saint Laurent's La Nuit de l'Homme or Parfums de Marly Leighton. While those are very good fragrances, when I think of cardamom, the first fragrance that I think of is this one, which is from the house of Memo Paris, and this is African Leather. Now, When I think of leather, of course, this is one of the first fragrances I think of as well. But to me, the leather combining with the cardamom in this fragrance is absolutely to die for. This is an awesome, slightly dirty leather. It's not the most easy to wear leather, but the cardamom makes it very, very sexy, and it puts it in a little bit more of a wearable territory. There's some cumin in here as well, adding almost like a savory touch to the fragrance. I think there's oud in here as well, but it's a very tame oud. There's nothing dirty with it. And to me, it's just super easy to wear. Like, I'm not off put by this at all. And a lot of people I've let try this fragrance, they've agreed. They think this thing smells fantastic, and it uses cardamom in a very dominant role. So if you want a sweet, spicy kind of date night leather fragrance with a little bit of a woody backbone, you should really look into this one. Nothing else out there smells like it, and it smells fantastic. So again, from the House of Memo Paris, featuring the note of cardamom, that is African leather. And finally, the last fragrance note for this list is tobacco, which you knew it had to be on here. I've talked about many tobacco heavy fragrances in my videos. I absolutely love them. In the case of the fragrance that I'm putting here at this spot, I was actually torn between two. I was kind of going back and forth, even during filming this video, kind of between shots. I was like, maybe I should swap it back. But no, in the end, I ended up going with this one, which is actually another Tom Ford. The fragrance is Tobacco Oud Intense, which sadly discontinued. I do feel bad sticking it here in this list, but it had to be here. This is such a fantastic tobacco fragrance, and it is one of the most authentic tobaccos I've smelled. In my experience in general with fragrances that use tobacco, it's on the syrupy sweet side, and it's usually a little bit synthetic. In the case of this fragrance, I honestly do think it is a natural tobacco note. It smells like they've taken dried tobacco leaves and extracted an actual oil from it. So fantastic smelling, very realistic smelling. It's paired with the oud here very nicely. And honestly, this is a more pleasant fragrance than the original tobacco oud. That one is a little bit harsh. This is just smoothened out, a little bit sweeter, and it has this kind of creamy animalic facet coming from some castoreum, which sounds a lot worse than it actually is. There's a reason that I have a backup bottle of this stuff. I never want to run out. So again, featuring the note of tobacco, the last fragrance here on this list is Tom Ford's Tobacco Oud Intense. Well, there you guys go. That was a list of my 7 favorite fragrance notes and then a fragrance to go along with them. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, or if you found it helpful or useful, I would really appreciate dropping a like just to show your support, and then that way more people can see my videos on YouTube. Additionally, if you want to write a comment, maybe just letting me know your thoughts, as well as some new video ideas or topics, that would be great too. And since you're down there doing all that stuff, if you've not already, if you could hit the subscribe button and then the bell notification, that would be amazing. That way you stay up to date on new videos whenever they get released going forward. But with all that out of the way, that's all I really have for you guys today. So I hope you have a good one. Stay healthy, stay wealthy, and smell great.